This is CBC Radio 1, 990 AM, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg.
I'm Rob Norman.
I'm Andrew Norton.
And on Personal Best, we help you tackle the stuff you'd be too embarrassed to ask an attractive, successful life coach about.
We have a slightly different approach to self-improvement.
Which is, we don't know what we're doing.
Definitely somebody following me.
She's holding a sword.
This is so nuts.
But in the end, it always works. Okay, it sometimes works.
You have no idea. This makes me...
Personal Best, Season 3. Available now wherever you get your podcasts.
You know the feeling of finding a really good podcast? Or the feeling of someone always being there, like your favorite radio show. Stream CBC Podcasts, CBC Music, and CBC Radio anytime, anywhere.
This is CBC News. Good afternoon. I'm Rosanna Hempel. At 12 o'clock, it's 19 in Winnipeg. Cloudy today, 60% chance of showers or thunderstorms. High of 26, feels like 32. We're learning more about a man who died in police custody this weekend. The Independent Investigation Unit says it's reviewing the death of a 52-year-old man early Sunday morning. He was arrested just before 4 Sunday morning in the 100 block of King Edward Street East. The man was taken to police headquarters where he was medically assessed and cleared by a paramedic. When officers with the Central Processing Unit checked on him in a cell around 7:30 that morning, he was unresponsive. He was declared dead in hospital. The IIU has asked the Manitoba Police Commission to appoint a civilian to monitor the investigation because it involves a fatality. RCMP say a private drone interfered this week with the STARS air ambulance in an emergency. Police say the helicopter was responding to a serious traffic collision. It was delayed in landing because of the drone. RCMP have not identified the operator. They warn flying a drone over an emergency scene is illegal. Violators can be fined up to $1,000. Drones are regulated by Transport Canada under the Canadian Aviation Regulations. The city's finance committee has to decide whether to shut down a Winnipeg limo company over unpaid taxes. The owner of the company appealed an order to cease operations, saying the city taxed him unfairly. CBC's Cameron McLean has details.
The city says London Limos owes nearly $145,000 in taxes and penalties. Owner Hardev Singh Sandhu says the city incorrectly assessed the size of his business in 2018. His tax payments went from $220 a month to $2,700. He says he repeatedly tried to get city officials to come and inspect his business. Sandhu says London Limos shared space with 3 other businesses. In 2022, a city inspector reassessed the square footage from 10,000 to less than 1,000. That lowered his tax payments to $600 a month. Committee members asked Sandhu why he didn't appeal to the Board of Revision, which handles tax assessments. He says no one told him to do that. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
On the first day of the fall session of Parliament, the Trudeau government is tabling some new mortgage rules. One of them means that all first-time home buyers will now be eligible for a 30-year mortgage. Here is Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland.
We are announcing that 30-year amortizations on insured mortgages will be available for all first-time home buyers. This really is about fairness for every generation. It's about making that first home more available for young Canadians, for first-time home buyers.
Up until now, a 30-year amortization only applied to new builds. Freeland is also raising the level for insured mortgages, moving it from $1 million to $1.5 million. Today's announced changes go into effect on December 15th. The Commission on Foreign Interference resumed today in Ottawa. Phase 2 of the public inquiry is looking at what Canada needs to do to prevent foreign meddling in the future. Justice Marie-Josée Hogg, who leads the commission, says transparency is a priority.
I remain as determined as ever to maximize the transparency of our work and therefore to make public as much information as possible. Our entire team has worked relentlessly to find ways of providing the public with information that at first sight seemed impossible to disclose.
The Commission will hear from a wide range of diasporas on how foreign interference and the measures to combat it affect their daily lives. The suspect in the apparent assassination attempt on Donald Trump is now charged with federal gun crimes. He was arrested carrying an assault weapon near the former U.S. president's golf course. Court documents show the suspect was hiding in the area for hours before he was found. Caroline Bargut reports.
In his first appearance in federal court, Ryan Routh said he understood the serious charges against him. The 58-year-old lives in Hawaii, but had previously resided in North Carolina, where he had been arrested on 8 separate occasions. Last year, he told the New York Times that he had traveled to Ukraine and wanted to recruit Afghan soldiers to fight there. Russia says the Ukrainian links showed that playing with fire had consequences. Ukraine calls that propaganda, saying it had no association with Routh. Martin County Sheriff William Snyder says if it wasn't for a witness who snapped a photo of Routh's vehicle, who knows if he would have been caught.
We had the vehicle, we thought we had him, but his facial affect was so flat. His demeanor was relaxed. I honestly thought it looked like somebody who had just left a church picnic and was on his way home.
Police are now searching for a motive. Caroline Bargut, CBC News, Washington.
Beijing has released a U.S. pastor who has been held in a Chinese prison for 18 years. David Lin was working as a missionary when he was found guilty of fraud and given a life sentence. The U.S. State Department has always insisted he was wrongfully detained. Lin is now on his way back to his family in Texas. That is the CBC News from Winnipeg. Your next local CBC News is at 12:30.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Radio Noon. I'm your host today, Brittany Greenslade. Well, good news for air travelers thanks to a tentative contract deal between Air Canada and its pilots. But the anticipation of a strike did cause planning chaos for a lot of Canadians. Coming up on our call-in conversation, what impact did an impending strike have on you? And what do you think needs to be done to limit the disruption of looming labor strikes and what they have on us? You can start texting us right away, 204-588-7355. Plus, while they may look cute and fluffy, but domesticated rabbits are causing concern for Selkirk residents and their numbers keep growing. We'll head to Selkirk to learn what's being done. It is 12:07. Well, they're a lot like the animals that you might find at a pet store, except they're hopping around the streets and in people's yards. Selkirk residents are dealing with an overpopulation of domesticated rabbits. And while those fluffy bunnies may look cute, they're also causing problems. CBC Manitoba community reporter Shanalee Vidal went to Selkirk to find out what's happening with these rabbits. She spoke with Emily Brass this morning on Information Radio about how she first heard about the rabbit situation.
Well, on social media, I've seen several posts referencing overpopulation. I saw a photo of rabbits in a parking lot. It looked like someone had thrown carrots to them. I saw many posts with people concerned about their gardens and about these rabbits attracting predatory animals. I even saw a post in a lost and found pet group where someone found some under a vehicle at an auto body shop. I also saw a post from someone who wanted to help manage the overpopulation. So I went to Selkirk and I met up with Paige Ryer, who has a pet rabbit at home named Minnow.
I've lived here for 5 years and I've noticed it the last 3 years, and the last year I've noticed like an explosion, and they're kind of just everywhere on this side of the city right now. Selkirk Avenue is pretty bad. Moody, Sophia, Mercy, Strathnaver, in front of the Hydro building over there as well is usually pretty bad. So usually like cottontail wild rabbits are just like brown and white, but these rabbits are black, multicolored, beige, orange. They have lop ears. The most common breed I'm seeing in them is lion heads, and that's not a wild breed of rabbits. They've pretty much claimed this area of Selkirk as their own. I don't see You see some squirrels over here, but I don't think I've ever seen a cottontail rabbit over here in a long time. My biggest fear is having the domestic rabbits expand through Selkirk, which is why I'm trying to put a stop to it.
Paige suggested that we meet at the intersection of Moody and Sophia, and she told me it's a popular place for these rabbits to gather.
Oh, wow. So what did you see there?
Well, Paige told me that there are usually many out on lawns and in the street on warmer days, and in the evening. It was a cooler day when I was there. I didn't see anything out of the ordinary at first, but then when I looked closer, I saw a fluffy white bunny stretched out near a tree on someone's front lawn. I even saw a baby one that skittered off behind a bushy fence. On the sidewalk, there were a couple of beige ones, and there's also a beige rabbit across the street, and one that was hopping around someone else's lawn where a fence and yellow tape had been put up to keep people from entering. Paige told me that some residents in the area have put signs on their lawns, and she showed me a photo and said she took of one of the signs, and it was made of cardboard, and in black marker it said, "Do not enter property, do not chase rabbits, they will run onto roadway, sorry, things were getting out of hand." So nobody knows how many bunnies are loose in Selkirk, just that it's enough to be very noticeable.
Yeah, and actually on our YouTube channel right now, we're seeing some video of those cute little bunnies that are such rascals for the people who are living there. Does everyone in Selkirk feel the way Paige feels?
Well, it's actually a rather divisive topic in Selkirk. Here is Paige Ryer again.
It's very controversial. A lot of people would prefer if we left them alone, but a lot of people are concerned. So I'm hoping that people are going to be able to speak up now about helping them, because a lot of people think these are wild rabbits and they're not. A lot of people are keeping them as pets in their backyard, so we kind of need help with the city to be able to get all these rabbits off the street.
And so that could involve going into people's yards?
Yes, unfortunately. At first I was looking at opening my own rescue, but then I reached out to Popcorns and Binkies, and they thought it'd probably be best if I just worked with them instead of opening something myself, so that's what we're doing.
I also met up with the CAO of Selkirk, Dwayne Nickel, who told me that the city was recently made aware of the situation.
Because they're domesticated rabbits, and because domesticated rabbits require human-provided shelter and food, releasing them into the wild is a form of animal abuse. The city does not enforce animal abuse legislation, so we contacted the chief veterinary officer in Manitoba as well as the RCP to let them know and to make the request that an investigation be conducted into this matter, and that they take appropriate actions to deal with the population. Well, we don't know for sure. We certainly have had some insight from citizens, as well as a conversation with an individual who indicated that they may be responsible or partially responsible for it. We can't really talk necessarily about that person or that conversation, but all that information has been provided to the chief veterinarian's office and making sure that they're fully aware of all the stuff that we have. There was a conversation with the bylaw enforcement officer, which again we've relayed to the province.
Nichols says he's worried the bunnies may lead to other unwanted guests.
They're a prey species. They can't really defend themselves because they're domesticated animals. And so what we're going to see is likely an increase in prey populations of coyotes and fox moving into Selkirk, and we definitely don't want to see that.
So what's the province saying, Shanley?
Well, I reached out to the province, and here is a response I received from a provincial spokesperson. The province can confirm the animal care line has been contacted about this matter and has confirmed it is a population of released or escaped rabbits. Animal Health and Welfare has provided guidance on measures that could be employed, but has advised that it is an animal control issue and is the responsibility of the municipality. So I then contacted the city of Selkirk again to get the reaction to that statement. And here's the city's email response to me. The verbal guidance provided was a suggestion to change the city's bylaws, which does not provide any support or guidance on how to address the current situation. It is the city's expectation, and we believe our citizens' expectation, that the provincial agency with the resources, expertise, and authority to prevent animal neglect and abuse would offer greater support to a fellow agent of the province, such as a municipal corporation.
So what is the city of Selkirk going to do now?
Well, here is CAO Dwayne Nickel once again.
We believe that an investigation has been undertaken. However, when we followed up with the office, we were told that they couldn't provide us any information according to Freedom of Information Protection of Privacy Act. We're sort of at this roadblock here that they're not providing any additional information to us. So we haven't seen any action being undertaken. So we're working with Popcorns and Binkies Rescue Haven to address the current population. So they're going to be, over the next few days, looking into the health and scale of the population just to get a better sense of what they would be required to do. And then after that, we'll be planning and working with them to coordinate a large-scale capture, and then spay and neutering program, making sure that they're healthy, and then looking to humanely rehome these animals.
Oh, so they could still be pets. It sounds like there could be a solution to this rabbit problem.
Well, things are not actually finalized yet. I contacted Popcorns and Binkies Rescue Haven. It's a Winnipeg-based rescue that is focused on smaller pets, particularly rabbits. The organization's director, Cindy Hildebrand, declined our interview request at that time, and here's the email response I received from Cindy Hildebrand. As you can imagine, there is a lot of planning that goes into these types of situations. We have been in talks with the City of Selkirk over the past couple of weeks, and while we definitely want to offer our assistance, no definitive decision has been made as to if we can help or what that help would look like. Now, in a social media post, Popcorns and Binkies had said, now this is back in August, we are racking our brains to find any solution to help out. As most of you know, we are a small foster-based rescue. We are rich in small animal expertise and are driven by the spirit of our volunteers, but we lack a physical shelter, and every animal in our care needs veterinary attention, so our capacity to help always comes down to two things, space and funds. Both are in very short supply. We are working on ways to bridge those gaps to allow us to step in and make a difference in Selkirk. So it's clear that there is a desire to help, but of course the situation is a bit complex.
Well, you know what they say too about rabbits, multiplying. It's just going to get to be bigger and bigger unless they do something. So, yeah.
Yeah, it could be a race against the clock as well.
That was CBC Manitoba community reporter Shanna Lee Vidal. You can read more on this story on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Poplar River First Nation, let's get to know each other a little bit better. CBC's Communities in Focus is coming to your community September 23rd to 27th. I can't wait to meet you and discover the incredible stories that make Poplar River unique. CBC's Communities in Focus, September 23rd to 27th. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for details.
You're listening to Radio Noon on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM and 990 AM. I'm your host today, Brittany Greenslade. Well, here in Winnipeg, mostly cloudy, and we've already seen some of those showers. It's an unsettled day here in the south. More showers tonight and a risk of a thunderstorm. Looking for highs of 26 degrees and the winds out of that southwest gusting up to 40 kilometers per hour. Again tonight, more showers and a risk of thunderstorms, dropping down to about 17 degrees, clearing in the morning, mix of sun and clouds tomorrow. Today, we are talking about Air Canada and the potential strike that was averted. Now, although that deal was reached between Air Canada and its pilots, the anticipation of a strike really threw many Canadians' travel plans into chaos. So how did that impending strike impact you? That's our call-in conversation. And what do you think needs to be done in the future? You can already start texting us 204-588-7355. It is 12:17 here on Radio Noon. Well, Terry Fox was honored across the country this weekend. There were runs and walks to raise money for cancer research. A girl in Comber, Ontario, Comber, Ontario, I believe, had a different idea, a lemonade stand. Lauren Meadows is 9. She has raised $39,000 by doing this over the past 6 years. CBC's Josiah Sinanen stopped by before the stand opened to talk with Lauren and her mom, Chantel Meadows.
Back in 2019, our little friend Megan Patrick was fighting leukemia at the age of 2. And so we had done lots of fundraising for her. But then that school year, they were learning about Terry Fox. And my daughter came home from school and says, Mom, I need to do a lemonade stand to raise money to find a cure because I don't want to lose my leg like Terry Fox did. So how do you say no to that? So 4 days later, we're doing a lemonade stand, raising about $1,000 the first year just by selling lemonade in our little town of Comber.
And how does it feel having a daughter like this and watching her do something like this?
It's truly incredible to see her kind of follow what our family does on a regular basis, but like also inspire her friends to do more. So we've had friends who've, also done lemonade stands for the Humane Society, the Community Living, Essex County, and they also make up cards for the hospital patients on Christmas at Erie Shores Healthcare and Valentine's Day. And so that's grown over the years, over the last 4 or 5 years, and it's just contagious and something that she really loves doing. And sometimes I actually have to tell her we can't do everything. I hope that she'll continue that and inspire the other younger kids to engage in, philanthropy and getting involved in their community, but just carrying that dream alive, because who can run a marathon every day for that long, let alone, fighting cancer at the same time.
And what do you think it was about the Terry Fox story that made you so inspired?
Well, he was really brave, and I don't think a lot of Canadian athletes that are really good can do that on one leg, to run a marathon every single day.
And talk to me a little bit about your friend Megan. You had a friend that went through cancer. What was that like for you, and why was that important to do something about it?
Well, I know if I had cancer and I was that little, and on Christmas Eve getting diagnosed with cancer, I would be pretty sad. So I wanted to do something about it to make her feel happy.
And Megan's doing okay today?
Yes.
That's amazing. How does that feel?
Good.
Are you going to see a lot of people come through? What are you expecting?
I'm expecting a lot of people because, lemonade stands, and it's really fun to see everybody helping and all the Canadians coming out here to support Terry Fox.
Yeah, talk to me about how it feels to have Comber coming out and seeing the town and meeting people you haven't seen before.
It feels good to know that a lot of people care about the things other people do, and it's really nice.
How much are you charging for your lemonade?
By donation.
Okay, awesome. And do you have a secret recipe?
It's the store recipe.
I love that. It's the store's recipe. That's 9-year-old Lauren Meadows talking about her lemonade stand. It was set up at a hardware store in Comber, Ontario on Saturday. We also heard from her mom, Chantel Meadows. Thanks to CBC Windsor's Josiah Sinanen for that piece. Well, husband and wife duo Burnstick have been writing music together since their first date, over a decade later, and their creativity journey shows no signs of slowing down. The next tune is from their latest album, Made of Sin, released this past spring. Have a listen. This is Burnstick with Closer.
Rivers to the sea.
that was closer by Burnstick. It is 12:25. Well, as fall quickly approaches, you might just be wondering what you should be doing in your garden. Rob Sproul has some suggestions on how to best prep your outdoor spaces for the upcoming colder seasons. He's the co-owner of Salisbury Greenhouses in Edmonton.
You know, things like tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, beans, if you haven't already, now's the time to start taking them down, start doing those final harvests, things like that. With your tomatoes now, you can still ripen tomatoes on the vine, green tomatoes, things like that. What you want to do is don't cut off the tomato. Cut off as much vine as you can. I know some people, I've heard stories of some people just ripping up their whole plant, hanging it upside down in a cold room in the basement. And what happens is a tomato's like a water balloon. And so the water goes in and that's all the nutrients and all the good stuff. The nutrients and things keep flowing from the stem into the fruit, even if it's disconnected from the plant. So they'll keep ripening in your basement. Put them in some paper bags or what have you. Try to keep them a little bit contained, in a paper bag or something like that, not plastic, because they release ethylene gas. And the ethylene gas is actually a ripening agent, so they help themselves ripen. You can cut back perennials if you want. One thing you probably do want to cut back on perennials are old kind of flower stalks, things like that. But in terms of the foliage, you can cut them if you want. You don't need to. You want to be watering your garden really well, especially your tender stuff, your tender roses, fruit trees, and any water-loving trees, birch, your willows, things like that. Trees have a hard time getting water because their roots are so far below the surface. So long duration with a hose or deep root water feeder. Actually, you can use a lot less water with one of those. We want fresh soil in the gardens. We want to amend it. We want to get some manure and some sea soil, some good stuff in there, right? But what happens is in the spring, we can't mix it in. It's frozen solid. So do it now. Blend it in. I don't like rototillers because they do really disturb the kind of, ecosystem, the microscopic ecosystem happening in there. But just fork it in the top 6 inches, get the weeds out, get things like that out, so that as soon as that top layer thaws in the spring, you can get out there with your peas and your salad greens and just get going.
Lots of good tips there. That's Rob Sproul. He's the co-owner of Salisbury Greenhouses in Edmonton. And later on this week, we're going to have a call in on fall gardening and cleaning up. So if you've got questions or ideas, stay tuned for that.
Hi, I'm Matea Roach, and I have a new show on CBC. It's called Bookends. Every week, authors from Canada and around the world will join me to discuss their latest books. We'll have best-selling authors and rising stars. Our conversations will be smart and surprising, because when the book ends, the conversation begins.
Bookends with Matea Roach premieres Sunday afternoon at 1:30 in Newfoundland, 3 Pacific, and on demand on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC Music Top 20. CBC Music Live. All right. Savor the flavor of the Francophone world on C'est Formidable. Experience the next wave of Indigenous music with Reclaim. The global sounds of frequencies. End your day or start your late night with music on CBC Radio 1. Weeknights at 11:30 in Newfoundland, and on demand on CBC Listen.
Well, our phone lines are going to open here in just a few minutes, and we're talking about air travel. So a deal has been reached between Air Canada and its pilots, but that anticipation of a strike threw many people into a bit of a tizzy this past week, and travel plans up in the air. So how did the impending strike impact you, or has one impacted you in the past? You can start texting us, 204-588-7355, and those phone lines will open in just a few minutes. Time now is 12:30.
This is CBC News. Good afternoon. I'm Rosanna Hempel. At 12:30, it's 21 in Winnipeg. 60% chance of showers or thunderstorms today. High of 26. It'll feel like 32. We're learning more about a man who died in police custody yesterday. Manitoba's police watchdog says it's investigating the death of a 52-year-old man. He was arrested just before 4 a.m. yesterday in the 100 block of King Edward Street East. The Independent Investigation Unit says the man was taken to police headquarters where he was medically assessed and cleared by a paramedic. When officers checked on him in a cell around 7:30 yesterday, he was unresponsive. The man was declared dead in hospital. The IIU has asked the Manitoba Police Commission to appoint a civilian to monitor the investigation because it involves a fatality. Winnipeg's Finance Committee is deciding whether to shut down a local limo company over unpaid taxes. The owner of the company appealed an order to stop operations, saying the city taxed him unfairly. The CBC's Cameron McLean brings us more.
The city says London Limos owes nearly $145,000 in taxes and penalties. Owner Hardev Singh Sandhu says the city incorrectly assessed the size of his business in 2018. His tax payments went from $220 a month to $2,700. He says he repeatedly tried to get city officials to come and inspect his business. Sandhu says London Limos shared space with 3 other businesses. In 2022, a city inspector reassessed the square footage from 10,000 to less than 1,000. That lowered his tax payments to $600 a month. Committee members asked Sandhu why he didn't appeal to the Board of Revision, which handles tax assessments. He says no one told him to do that. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
RCMP say a private drone interfered with a Stars air ambulance this week. Mounties say the helicopter was responding to a serious traffic collision. It was delayed in landing because of the drone. Police haven't identified the operator. They warn that flying a drone over an emergency scene is illegal. Violators can be fined up to $1,000. And it's a busy time of day when it comes to voting in today's by-election in Elmwood, Transcona. Elections Manitoba says just like in other elections, more people show up to cast ballots at lunch hour, after work, and then again when polls close. Polls will be open until 8:30 this evening. If you're still in line at that time, you'll still be able to cast your ballot. People in the riding are choosing an MP to succeed Daniel Blakey, who resigned back in March. And that is the CBC News from Winnipeg. Your next local CBC News is at 1:30.
Thanks, Rosanna.
You're welcome.
Welcome back to Radio Noon on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM and 990 AM. Riley Lachuk in now. And Riley, an unsettled day. I already got caught in one storm this morning or one downpour. And you know what? I think it's my fault because every time that it's supposed to rain, I wear sandals thinking that, wishful thinking. And it never helps.
Yeah. A little bit of instability. Actually, we do have some severe thunderstorm warnings in place now into northwestern Ontario. That's where I'm going to start because this is where we have the bulk of that active weather now moving through. So we have a tornado watch in place for Kenora, Fort Frances, Rainy River, that general part of northwestern Ontario. Severe thunderstorm warning now in place as well for Fort Frances and Rainy River and the rest of the region under severe thunderstorm watch into northwestern Ontario. So far, on the Manitoba side of the border, at least, no watches and warnings. But yeah, we have seen a little bit of unsettled weather moving through. What has prompted some of these watches and warnings is a line of storms that has been moving through parts of Minnesota and North Dakota, tracking to the northeast throughout the day, throughout the morning hours today. That's now crossed into northwestern Ontario. So Rainy River getting pretty severe storm in the past hour or so here with quite a bit of lightning. And that particular storm system making its way to the north and to the east. Kenora getting some pretty heavy rain. That Trans-Canada corridor into northwestern Ontario getting some pretty heavy rain at the moment as well. And a few other little rogue cells have been kind of moving through the city here, bringing us some scattered showers and a little more in the way of thunderstorm activity further south. So places like Morris, Emerson getting some rain, even as far to the west as Morden and Winkler seeing a few thunderstorms as we head into the afternoon hours here. Expect that instability to linger as we get through the rest of the day. We could see some more showers. The best chance for that comes later into the afternoon, early evening, around the supper hour in Winnipeg, a little bit earlier points to the south and to the west of Winnipeg. And then we're staying unsettled as we head through the evening hours tonight. A good chance we'll see some on and off showers really through the evening hours into the overnight period for the Red River Valley, southeastern Manitoba, into the White Shell in northwestern Ontario. Could see some of that lingering into early Tuesday. By the time we get into the lunch hour, though, we're back to a mix of sun and clouds in Winnipeg. And then we have another shot at a little bit of instability later Wednesday into Thursday again. So a bit of an unsettled week. I know we've been spoiled. We've been spoiled the last couple weeks of some dry, hot weather. So we're looking at a little bit of unstable weather for the rest of the day today and into the coming days as well. I think we'll reach 26 this afternoon in Winnipeg, 24 in Brandon. Risk of some isolated showers, even some thunderstorms back to the west as well. Tuesday, 25 degrees, 26 for Wednesday in Winnipeg. A good chance we'll see a few more showers rolling through Thursday. And then temperatures start to fall off by the time we get to the weekend. And by the time we start fall, with temperatures in the low 20s by the weekend and beyond.
Riley, I know our listeners know you are a busy guy because they see you on TV, they hear you on radio at all hours of the day. Yep. But you've been extra busy today because everybody's been stopping by your desk going, how much rain are we getting? Yeah. How much?
Winnipeg, I'm going to say a general... I'm going to say about maybe 10 millimeters. Could see it into that 15 range through the evening tonight. Could see some more, though, especially if we see one of these little isolated thunderstorms, maybe a downpour. You might see, 25, 30 millimeters in your backyard, but down the street, you might only get into that 10 millimeter range. So kind of hit and miss is what I'm calling it. But generally speaking, 10 to 15 millimeters probably through the night tonight.
All right. Thank you, Riley.
No problem.
Appreciate it. Riley's going to keep an eye on that weather system for us all day, and you can catch him tonight at 6 on CBC Winnipeg News. Well, there is good news for air travelers. Now that Air Canada and its pilots have reached a tentative contract deal over the weekend, there's no labor stoppage and no airport chaos. But that anticipation of that labor stoppage really still caused disruptions. And it just highlights how much of an impact a large carrier like Air Canada has on air travel. So how did the looming strike impact you? Maybe you've been caught in one before with those flight cancellations. You've been stuck somewhere. Give us a call, 204-780-0893. I want to hear those terror travel stories. Or you can text us, 204-588-7355. So what can be done to reduce the impact of a disruption such as a strike, whether it's air travel or even rail? You can join that conversation. With us is John Graddick. He's aviation industry expert, lecturer in supply networks and aviation management at McGill University, and he joins us by Zoom from Montreal. Good afternoon, John.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm great. You are from my alma mater. I am a McGill grad here, so nice to speak with you.
McGillian. I'm McGillian.
McGillian, yeah. So this is something we've been keeping an eye on. Many, many people were watching this. Some, really worried about what this was going to mean for trips, whether it was vacation, business, what have you. An agreement was reached. So what can you tell us about how the deal came together?
Oh, it was touch and go, really. I think that if you had asked me on Friday night, what I would consider to be the odds of a work stoppage on Wednesday, I would have said at least 70% chance that it was going to happen. The rhetorical debate between Air Canada and the union was pretty nasty. Air Canada management basically had called the union offers to be outrageous and that they were totally unacceptable. And Air Canada had something like about 30% on the table. And then magically, the Prime Minister, the members of cabinet said, we're not touching this one. We're not, let these guys sort it out at the negotiating table. The board of directors of Air Canada kind of went into the action as well and putting some pressure on the management team to come up with a solution. And magically, 24 hours of bargaining, starting Saturday morning, we achieved a agreement early Sunday morning with the pilots getting 42% over 4 years. So, a lot of pressure being put on Air Canada to kind of come to the table with an offer that made some sense to the pilots. The pilots had to reduce their expectations somewhat. So that's how negotiations go. And everybody has to give a little, make sure that they kind of get their membership to accept it. This has got to go to a ratification vote with the pilots, which is always a risky situation, but I'm pretty sure the pilots got 90% of what they were looking for, which in this case is a pretty good deal.
So, John, 42% increase in wages. I've heard that number passed along to me by a number of people that had their own opinions on it. What's your reaction to that?
Oh, it's high. Of course it's high. When's the last time you had a 42% raise?
Never. I'll tell you that. Not once.
But this is a situation that is, partly Air Canada's own doing. You had a 10-year contract, with a 2% annual increase included in that contract. Contract was signed in 2014, expired 1 year early because the union said we gotta get a more modern contract in place. So there was a lot of catch up that contract forced upon Air Canada and the union to negotiate. But the bigger issue was that the standard wages that are being offered by carriers, particularly in the U.S., jumped significantly over the last 18 to 24 months, where many of the carriers, if not most of the larger carriers, had increases that jumped the wage rate for the pilots, from 35 to 45%, depending on the carrier. So, the Canadian carrier, Air Canada, was usually about 10% lower than the U.S. rate. So now, not only did the pilots have cost of living catch up on a 10-year contract, but they also had to do some catching up to the newly established global standards for pilot pay. So it was a double whammy that Air Canada had to address.
We'd like people to join the conversation with us here. Maybe this looming strike or the previous looming strike, now that it's been averted, had issues for you. Maybe it impacted your travel. You can give us a call, 204-780-0893, or of course text us, 204-588-7355. We did get a text here from Dave, and he says he thinks we should be supporting any group of people with the courage to stand up for wages and a work-life balance. He says a majority of people under 40 don't earn enough to buy a home. Gains by any group should help us all over time. That's from Dave. Thanks, Dave, so much for that. So, John, I want to get your reaction to that. It says it should help us all over time. What impact is this going to have on people who fly?
Not much in terms of, the question has always been, if I get these 40% wage increases for pilots, how much is my airfare going to go up? And the answer is there is no correlation between price increases for your expenses and the fares you pay. There really isn't. The fares you pay are a function of what the market will bear and what the competition does for you in terms of keeping prices in check. So, the relationship, if you ask me on a cost basis, how much does a pilot's wages affect the price of affect the cost, of a flight? I would say, probably no more than about 3%, 4% of the flight's costs are pilot based. But then to take the correlation further and to look at, well, how much of those price increases for pilots are going to affect prices, fares? The answer is not a clue. There really isn't any. So it's going to have to be Air Canada being able to manage its costs, absorb the increases that they've committed to these pilots, and to manage its costs and its prices accordingly.
So this doesn't necessarily mean that we're all of a sudden going to start seeing Air Canada's ticket costs going up by $100 or $200. People shouldn't be expecting that.
Don't expect it. I think we have enough competition in Canada by WestJet, Porter, Flair, to keep Air Canada, on the short string on this one. And if Air Canada starts to increase prices for whatever reason, pilots included, the competition will take care of that pretty quick.
John, there were a lot of people, I think, that were starting to sweat last week, that had trips booked, had plans booked, whether it was weddings, whether it was business travel, leisure, whatever that might have been. So what impact does just the possibility of a strike by such a large carrier like Air Canada really have on air travel?
It has a very dampening effect on air travel, like 100,000 passengers fly on Air Canada. This is not a small carrier, so bigger than WestJet. And so you really have to feel bad for the passengers that are affected, that would have been affected by this strike. And yeah, there's inconvenience would be horrendous. But Air Canada did a thing when they talked about the compensation for these cancellations. Had they come about, that you would get refunded for your ticket, no matter what conditions you had, whether you bought a fully refundable or a fully non-refundable ticket, you were going to be offered a full refund if your flight was canceled as a result of this work stoppage or threat of a work stoppage. So, there was refundability. The question is, you weren't protected on your trip.
Yep.
And I think that was the big issue. Air Canada could not have managed, protecting passengers' trips for 100,000 passengers a day. It's humanly impossible to manage that volume. So, passengers would have been left on their own. And we had some passengers who, I was starting to talk about this situation a couple of weeks ago. And I made recommendations that if you have an Air Canada trip on a discounted ticket, which most people have, your best bet would be to buy a fully refundable ticket on a competitor. And if Air Canada goes on strike, at least your trip is protected. And if Air Canada doesn't go on strike, your Air Canada trip is okay, and you get a full refund from your ticket that you purchased on the other carriers. So it did cost you a few hundred or maybe thousands of dollars to buy that fully refundable ticket. But if your trip was that much of a requirement for you, whether it's a wedding, a cruise ship, or a family outing, there is capacity in the Canadian aviation system to, in fact, meet the demand that's out there that was not able to get a seat, not be able to fly in Air Canada. So it would have cost you a few bucks, but at least it was refundable. And I think that people who did, in fact, do that strategy, were very happy they bought a fully refundable ticket.
Yeah. If you were somebody that was impacted even just by this possibility of the strike and you've got a story to share, you can give us a call, 204-780-0893, or text us, 204-588-7355. Dave gave us a text a little earlier saying that we should be applauding this because people stood up for their rights and for their wages. So, John, can anything be done to reduce the impact of a disruption such as this on Canadians? Because we seem to be hearing more and more about labor disputes and strikes, and it feels like last year it was hitting all sorts of areas. And travel for a lot of people is a hard one when they go on strike. It hurts.
I think we can. I think that the whole thing about strikes and lockouts and labor negotiations and contractual arrangements is been a practice that's been around for decades in Canada, if not centuries. So strikes and lockouts have always been a mechanism to, in fact, bring discussions to a head and to have people, pay attention, try to resolve an issue. I think it's time that in transportation, at least, whether it's marine, whether it's rail, whether it's air, and probably even trucking, that we have a different model, that, we don't always resort to strikes and lockouts as a means of progressing negotiations, further. I think there has to be a recognition that transportation is really an essential part of who we are as a nation. Our supply chains, absolutely need transportation to work, and we only, it doesn't take long. We just saw what happened with rail a few weeks ago. That the economy kind of went, whoops. We have a problem here meeting our contractual commitments to move things like grain or potash or anything that we're moving out of Western Canadian ports. And we have to bring that transportation system back into play. So my thinking is that we have to kind of think through a different model about how do we, in fact, get agreement between management and labor that doesn't resort to strikes and lockouts. And there are models around the world that have been used for a few years now that kind of revert to another model of resolving labor disruptions and resolving things like labor, wage rates, benefits, all of those good things, rather than going into a strike. And I think we're about ready to do that in Canada. We have to do it.
Yeah, John, and you touched on it there. We keep talking about people and vacations and business and all of that type of thing. But this isn't just people that we're moving around the country by air. There's cargo. This is part of our supply chain, as you said. So why does it seem like there is just those two alternatives, whether it's a full strike or a lockout? There doesn't seem to be any other alternatives, or are there other alternatives?
Well, the Air Canada tried to get binding arbitration from our friends over in Ottawa. That didn't work. The politicians basically said, no, we're not interested. That's not the way you solve your labor relations problem, which is true. You don't want to get the government involved. You don't want to force people back to work because nobody wins on that one. And we've had too many examples of those types of arrangements that failed miserably in the long term. So I think that, negotiations are really the way to go about doing it between labor and management. I'm just saying that there has to be a different set of consequences. Consequences, in terms of how you pressure, organizations, such either land management or labor, basically come to an agreement. I think that the era of strikes and lockouts, is over. We've got to do something different. Somehow, some way, we need to have some type of, I don't want to call it arbitration or conciliation or mediation, whatever it is. There has to be, a different way of getting labor and management to have labor peace without resorting to a disruption of our supply chain and causing the angst that we were going to be causing hundreds of thousands of Canadians, if we hadn't solved this Air Canada problem.
So, John, what impact could this have on Air Canada from a business perspective? Is this going to hurt them in that way? Do you think that they're going to see people not booking with them because they think that they could potentially go on strike? Like, is there any sort of fallout for them as a business?
I think, reputation-wise, yeah, there is. I think that Air Canada learned a lesson in this one. This was a master class, that I would teach in a classroom environment of how the union handled Air Canada. The union basically did a masterful job of protecting their positions. They presented it well to the Canadian public. They had informational pickets, going up months ahead of time. They had a social media program, which was very good. And Air Canada blew it. For the president to say that the demands of the union are outrageous, and then within 96 hours, come up with a settlement that blew past the outrageous offer that he was considering, and Air Canada took it. That tells me that somebody on Air Canada misread the situation. So, yeah, would it affect Air Canada commercially? Probably not. It's the biggest game in town. But from a management perspective, from a management reputation perspective, this is not one of Air Canada's better days.
And what do you think really can be learned from these negotiations? You said this is a master class that you're going to be teaching in school. So what's your takeaway here?
Well, I think that you have to, when it comes to making sure that you are looking at strategies that are being employed by either side, that you have to make sure that you are equipped to be able to handle the quid pro quo. That if they're going to ramp up the social media campaign, so do you. If they're going to do all of these informational pickets, so you have to basically get in front of the traveling public and get them to talk to you about it. But I found in Air Canada's case, none of the executive team at Air Canada was involved in fact, presenting the business case for Air Canada's position until about 72 hours before the strike deadline. We finally saw the VP of Public Affairs show up on Wednesday with some statements. But, for 15 months of negotiations, like, nobody showed up. They were just issuing press releases. You need to have people in front of your customers. You have to communicate that with your customer. And Air Canada, in this case, did not happen, and unfortunately, they paid the price.
Lots to learn. John, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
My pleasure, Brittany. Take care, and hopefully we don't have to talk about Air Canada labor relations for quite a while.
I hope so. Thank you. John Gredick is a lecturer in supply networks and aviation management at McGill University. We spoke with him from Montreal.
Complicate this, I know. Always in a constant state of yes and no. Maybe I'm living all my life in vain. Ooh, but now you got me feeling some kind of way. Just you laughing after all is everything that I could want. Just you laughing so damn. You said let you fly and I felt so light. So am I. Yes, I'm quick to rush aside. Comes to feed, but so easily I ride with you next to me. And I'll never get enough of what you do. Oh, I can never get enough of you. Oh, just your loving after is everything that I could want. Just your love is so dear. You set you flying high, but so am I. So am I. Well, 'cause when I'm on the precipice, feeling the weight of the world, nothing but your precious love, and all my tides they turn. Just your loving, and after all, is everything that I could want. Just your love is so divine.
That was Ivan Hartle in Vancouver with So Am I. 12:57 here, and Faith Fundal is in with me now. Faith is going to be up to speed this afternoon. What do you got for us?
Well, it is Election Day in Elmwood, Transcona. We're going to hear more about what voters there need to know to be able to cast their ballots. As you know, it will the by-election will determine who will succeed Daniel Blakey, who has won the riding in every election except for back in 2011 when a Conservative won the riding. So it's one of the by-elections across the country, one of two that many political watchers are watching. So we'll follow that on the show today.
All right. Thanks, Faith.
Thank
and
you.
if that is your riding, get out and vote. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. Tech Marshall Hodgins, thank you so much. Director Wendy Parker, our YouTube live stream with Kevin Nipatebo. Thank you so much for watching us there. You're listening to CBC Radio 1. Up next, the next chapter.